Hello everyone, and of course, welcome back to another Mortal Kombat 1 video, with the story of Mortal Kombat 1 having officially concluded. At least, I do hope you all have played it, considering what we do here, with us all knowing the first year's worth of DLC via the Combat Pack. This now leaves a very interesting question of whom we could see in next year's worth of DLC. But what sparked this idea? What brought up this question? Well, very recently, Ed Boon decided to go on Twitter, and in classic Ed Boon fashion, tease us all with a photo featuring a number of different horror icons, with ticks over those that have featured in their games, and question marks hovering over the others. So, with no doubt in my mind that the second Combat Pack, or at least expansion, is underway, I thought that today we could go through the options here, discuss the possibility of them making an appearance within the series, and whether or not I could actually see it happening. But before we do begin, as we kick things off, I'd super appreciate if we could first give this video a thumbs up, as not only does it help out this video, but also this channel out as a whole, especially with YouTube trying to effectively curb Mortal Kombat content on the channel. So it really helps out here. And if you like what we do here and wish to see all things story and lore related, please feel free to subscribe, as well as tick that bell to stay up to date with all things lore related. So with that said, let's talk about arguably the godfather of the slasher genre, Michael Goddamn Myers, an icon of the franchise that would really go on to help broaden the genre to that of mainstream appeal, creating an appetite for the subgenre that would begin to spill into the mainstream. It simply cannot be understated the impact that Michael had when it came to broadening the horizons of the genre, as it began to unravel into that of the supernatural. Halloween alone could really be seen as the catalyst that helped lead to the creation of other slasher icons like Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger. Michael has been in very high demand now, especially after the appetite the guest characters in MKX had given us. But do I think that this is a good choice for Mortal Kombat 1? Because honestly, I'm actually very torn on this decision. You see, there's no denying Michael's cultural relevance to that of the genre as a whole. I think many of the characters that have become DLC wouldn't be relevant or even exist because of him. However, Michael is kind of in a delicate position here, because the Halloween series as a whole was more so designed to become an anthology than something solely revolved around Myers. And I think due to its overall lack of direction and Busta Rhymes, Michael's place amongst this genre has been contested, as it felt like those that followed his debut kind of surpassed his infamy. But no horror movie franchise has ever had a truly clean track record.
You guys might want to run.
So what would be Michael's main selling points here? Well, you see, that's the hard part, as I feel like the window for his inclusion has indeed passed, with the most recent Halloween sequel trilogy having completely wrapped up. As far as we know, NetherRealm at one point did reach out for his inclusion, but there didn't seem to be enough of an interest in order for Blumhouse to allow Michael to make the cut. Now, I know some of you are probably saying, oh, it doesn't matter that the trilogy's over, but here's the thing. NetherRealm love their cross-promotion. Guest characters allow the team to tap into that casual market and bring in some new fans. It serves as a beneficial branch for both sides, hence why I think the likelihood of a Myers inclusion happening anytime soon would not really be on the cards, especially with the rights of the character having returned. In the future though, I will say it's definitely much more possible, and in my opinion, only really a matter of time for when the boogeyman eventually does appear. But from a story and lore perspective, do I think this could work? Oh yeah, definitely. You see, Michael was in a very interesting predicament narratively. He's had 3 different mainline iterations. The original, which had him be part of a supernatural cult. Another, where he was a rage-filled zombie-esque monster from the Rob Zombie line of movies. And then the embodiment of evil in the most recent trilogy. There's a lot of narrative ideas to pull from that honestly fit into the Mortal Kombat universe extremely well. They could tap into that cult aspect from the Netherrealm or even Outworld as to how he's unstoppable. His Rob Zombie counterpart could very well tap into that as well, and possibly something involving Quan Chi. As for his 2018 version, they could strictly focus on him being the embodiment of evil and the supernatural aspects of the character that could indeed lie with that of the Netherrealm and maybe death itself. Like I said, there's a lot of ideas to toy around with here. My only current worry with Michael is definitely his limitations with a knife. I know historically he's definitely used other weapons, but the knife has always kind of been his signature thing. So, would I be down to see Michael make an appearance? Sure, I'd definitely be game, but I'm not entirely sure if this will be happening anytime soon. Moving on, we're on to easily my favorite choice amongst all of the characters here, Ghostface. Now this is a really interesting one amongst the cast, because the Ghostface mantle and title has been worn by at least 13 different individuals. So in terms of choice, there is a lot to pick from. And with a 7th installment on the horizon, I will say of all of the choices we have on the list here, this is by far easily the most favored from a marketing standpoint. It's a very solid choice. Scream came out at the perfect time within the genre, where fatigue was showing, and the formula had become too linear. But with Scream, it was a self-aware satirical meta slasher that knew of its own rules, and played and manipulated the own tropes of its genre, making this very unique satire that I will say still holds up to this very day, and much like Halloween, led to many future copycats that would try to emulate its success. But Scream is Scream, and damn is it fucking good. Straight up, one of my personal favorite movies of all time. But with that said, could Ghostface fit into Mortal Kombat? Well, I'm kind of yes and no on this. From a gameplay standpoint, it does suffer from the Michael Myers syndrome of how creative could you make a knife combat character. But also, I pay goddamn good money to hear Roger Jackson perform his Ghostface role against some of the iconic characters of the series, especially Johnny Cage.
What's your favorite scary movie?
But I think there's a really fun aspect they could tap into here. You see, one of the best and biggest payoffs of the Scream movies, not you three, is essentially the reveal of the killer. What was the motivation, the who, what, when, where, and why, that leads to probably the most fun part of the film. And I think that could really play off well in the Mortal Kombat universe. Because instead of using a character like Billy Loomis, or any of the other Ghostface killers, you could grab one of the more obscure characters and actually fit them into that role. I think a pair and duo, as it is Scream, that could really work well in the role is Cobra and Kira. Now, I'll make it absolutely no secret, I think these characters are insanely lame, but this could be a very cool and interesting way of repackaging the characters, adding that kind of unique Mortal Kombat flair to the Ghostface mantle, kind of like how they handled Alien with his Tarkatan influence. The only thing I could see holding him back is of course the supernatural aspect, but this could easily be handled by whomever dons the mask. So I think that this is a really interesting way of reintroducing some older characters, while simultaneously make this Ghostface unique to the series, as well as its own franchise. Now moving on, we do have another character here, and that is the iconic Cenobite, Pinhead. And God, Pinhead is so cool. The original progenitor of what I would say is a mainstream torture porn-esque horror icon. Pinhead is like no one else in the genre, and honestly, isn't someone I would actually ever brand as a slasher. Deriving from an interdimensional equivalent of hell, Pinhead is what is known to his universe as a Cenobite, a unique brand of demon that thrives off fear, suffering, and pain of mortals for sustenance. They are unique beings, because to them, it is pleasure. Now, the Hellraiser series as a whole it's a bit of a weird one, especially with how many installments it does have. As whilst Clive Barker had overseen the original 4 movies, the following installments from that point onwards were never actually designed or created as Hellraiser movies in mind. Instead, the interdimensional demons would simply just be lumped into the plots, hence the decline in the quality of the franchise, as well as the popularity of the character. If you really think about it, most people only know Pinhead from his visual design, and not the fact that he comes from the Hellraiser franchise. So, if we're going back to the criteria I pointed out earlier, in terms of cross-promotion, I definitely do not see it favoring the Cenobite, especially with its current lack of brand recognition. And this issue is only deepened by its 2022 reboot counterpart, which did get largely heavily mixed reviews, even from its own fandom. So the odds aren't particularly great here. And with no news of a sequel on the horizon, an appearance from Pinhead is more than likely very slim. From a gameplay design perspective, Pinhead is very MK. By having supernatural abilities as part of his core design, you are able to freely and creatively not limit yourself with how the character could play. Because he's a demonic priest, he could call in other Cenobites for assistance, maybe having them replace the cameo system, kind of like how Cento replaces it. And in terms of gameplay design, he could utilize chains to restrain his enemy and effectively zone them out. Because, let's face it, Pinhead has never really been known for his physical prowess, so a trap or zoning style of gameplay could definitely be very fitting for him. As for story and narrative, this could very easily tie into that of the Netherrealm, as Pinhead and his minions are interdimensional demons. So they very well could be looking for a new world to take over, and maybe try to convert those in the Netherrealm to their side as Cenobites. There's a lot of interesting ideas at play that could make this work. But alas, I think that the dwindling interest in the IP is very problematic for him and the franchise. So sadly, I definitely don't see it happening, as cool as it would be to have him in game. Moving on to our next character here. Seeing as we are on the theme of torture here, we now of course have John Kramer from Saw. Now, if you're a Gen Zer, then you more than likely missed out on the unending onslaught of the early 2000s torture horror boom. Which you're lucky, because there was a lot of those movies. But this subgenre of horror was basically spearheaded by the Saw franchise. For better or for worse, the Saw franchise had a huge impact on the genre, making multiple copycats that would try to emulate its very early success. However, in later installments, as these plots became more and more elaborate, and as John Kramer's message started to become more watered down, the series began to fall out of favour with fans, especially after its yearly cycle. Plus, it didn't really help that it was going into direct competition with Paranormal Activity, which at the time was also causing a resurgence and boom in the found footage genre. This led to a very slow but inevitable decline for Saw. But in recent years, Saw has been climbing back more and more, with its most recent iteration being Saw X. So with that said, if there ever was a time for John Kramer, Amanda, or any of the pupils that have carried on his legacy to appear in Mortal Kombat, hell, it should have been now. Not to say that the time has completely passed, as no doubt there will be more sequels, but I find it to be kind of a Michael Myers situation with how the window has indeed passed. Now, if I'm entirely real, I don't really know how you could make John Kramer unique, or really any part of Saw special to that of the fighting game genre. Whilst from a gameplay perspective, yes, he'd be like the perfect trap setup character, kinda like Ghostface. The human factor of Saw's mortality is what allows that universe to stay so grisly. No one's immortal or supernatural. Death is something all characters are bound by. Thus, I don't think John or any of his pupils really fit into that role here. The only way I could kind of see this working is kind of like in the case of Ghostface, where someone else dons the mantle, but is wearing the costume. It's a very strange predicament. Plus, let's face it, Saw movies aren't really known for their fight sequences. Whilst I can't deny there's some cool ideas, especially with the traps you could pull from, I don't know if the series is really suited for something on a personal one-on-one fighting game. But hey man, I'd be more than happy to actually be proven wrong here. But as of right now, I personally just don't see it. Game over. Our last and final character here is the infamous killer doll, Chucky. And honestly, you guys don't need an intro for Chucky. We all know Chucky. We all have those childhood nightmares. No, it's just me. Okay. Chucky, aka Charles D. Ray, is the infamous antagonist and main slasher of the Child's Play franchise, having run all the way back from 1998 till this very day. Now, Chucky's gimmick is a fun one in the genre, playing off the desire of consumerism and demonizing it in the 80s. Child's Play weaponizes that nightmare fuel into a deceptive, foul-mouthed, vicious little shit known as Chucky, a child's doll that is used as a disguise for the killer, having performed an ancient voodoo ritual to hide his identity. Charles is now faced with the consequences of his physical being merging with that of the doll's, gaining his flesh and blood. Of course, as sequels pass by and more layers are added to this character and curse, you get a lot of really crazy elaborate sequels that did receive a bit of mixed reception, as it kind of goes from a horror flick to a very tongue-and-cheek horror, with Chucky now the centerpiece of it. Now, I can't deny, I'm not all that familiar with the character outside of the childhood trauma I just pointed out, but Chucky is what I will say is a face of the genre that has managed to stand the test of time. Whilst yes, it has been a bumpy road, it's still going relatively strong to this very day. But do I think it translates over to Mortal Kombat? No, not really. Outside of the wonders of voodoo magic that could be super interesting to the universe, he, much like Ghostface and Michael, are known for their large knives, and it doesn't help that he is super duper small. You see, from a gameplay design standpoint, this is extremely problematic. And I know from a casual perspective, this isn't kind of a make or break deal. But with esports taking more of a prominent role in the gaming hemisphere, something like this could easily be seen as game breaking, and thus would make him tournament illegal. Fun fact, this actually happened to Yoda in Soul Calibur 4. He was tournament banned due to how short his hurtbox was, having it so characters couldn't punish him properly. Alongside this, from a franchise standpoint, Child's Play has been relegated to that of a series instead of a movie franchise. Thus, I think with less eyes on it, I don't know if this would be in NetherRealm's ballpark, which is honestly a shame here. But going off NetherRealm's history and habits with cross-promotion, if there ever was a time to capitalize on that popularity, it would be now, as the Chucky series is returning this month with its 3rd season. But with that said, I do hope you have enjoyed this video and come away learning more. I also really do hope I haven't managed to piss a lot of you off with my thoughts and ideas. But I did want to come into this video with some very realistic expectations of just how NetherRealm do kind of approach their guest characters and DLC. So with everything said and noted here, what horror icon would you like to see feature in Mortal Kombat 1? And how would you like to see them play? Please do comments down below. Personally, I'm a really big fan of the Scream franchise, and I have to say, I'd be super down to see a Ghostface killer being donned by one of the lesser known MK characters. But we'll just have to wait and see. So as always, stay strong, stay well, and keep on fighting. Take care everyone, I'll see you all soon.